Okay guys, this will be kind of part two of the Case 480C backhoe brake rebuild. I just wanted to give onlookers a little bit of a different perspective here. So I'm kind of sitting underneath the backhoe now, looking up at the brake housings. So you can see the back wheel is kind of over there. Backhoe would be over there, the other back wheel. And so as we're under here looking up, this is actually the right brake housing, and it's a little different than the left. The right brake housing actually has a lever that fits kind of up in here. You'll see that right here, and that's part of kind of a differential locking system, and it goes up through the floor. Yeah, you do have to pull that off. As I had mentioned earlier, it's 4 bolts to remove the brake housing. So if we're looking here, you got this bolt here. You got one around the corner here. You can't hardly see it from where I'm at, but one around there, one up here, and one way up here. And so you don't need to remove this one that you can see right here. That actually holds the brake bands on the inside, and it'll come off without actually removing that. So don't worry about that. Now, within this brake housing, there's brake bands that go up all the way through the top, and those go all the way around a brake drum. And the drum is actually what stops the backhoe. You actually use a little bit of a 3-dimensional braking system. So the brake bands grab the brake drum, and then it expands laterally and applies pressure to the inside of this brake housing here. And the inside, which is kind of a brake plate, so to speak, and it's right here. And this is a really thick, about a 1/2-inch steel plate that needs to usually come off and be inspected. One problem that I had while we were working on this, went in, pulled this right housing off, and it was actually filled full of oil. And so that indicated to me that both of those oil seals were bad. And there are actually 2. One's an O-ring around that brake plate, and then there's actually a seal around this part of the differential that's going through the transmission. So I removed that, cleaned it all up, got rid of the oil, and as you can imagine, oil inside a brake housing is not going to allow a 20,000-pound vehicle to stop, so you got to get that cleaned up. The other part of this is right in between the transmission and this brake housing. You can't see them. They're very, very small, very thin, but there are also about 5 to 6 very, very thin metal shims in here that adjust the distance of the bearing inside the brake housing. So we had to clean those up, put them all back in. Things are going pretty good. You have actually right here, this is part of your parking brake, and we had to adjust that. We'll get this little bell housing back on as far as the differential lock, and should be ready to go. So that's kind of perspective 2, and from there, well, the only other bit of advice that I can really give you is really make sure you take some time removing this slave cylinder hose. And I know it's hard to see, sorry about the lighting, just bear with me. And there's kind of a different view of that. And as you come up under here, that's actually a view of the slave cylinder. And then there's the bleed valve in front as well. And so after you get it all put back together, you bleed it out just like you would any other brake, type of a system. And it's really, really good to go. But this hose going into the slave cylinder, it's pretty short. You can't find them anywhere, and they're about $50. So you got to take pretty good care to not mess that up while you're pulling it out. And from there, should be pretty good. I hope that gives everybody a good idea what's going on. I can be communicated through email with YouTube and answer any questions you've got. Thank you.